Hello, everyone. Welcome to our workshop today, Connecting the Dots in Distribution. I am your host, Amy Keenan, founder of the ISV Society. I like to put these webinars, workshops, and educational events together to help you become familiar with what's available in the ecosystem to help make your jobs easier, because that's our ultimate goal. And today, as we know, we're talking all about distribution, and our customer that we're going to be focusing on is True Brew Distribution. Try and say that a million times. And they are going to be showing you some wonderful things today on how to use an accounting system, as well as e-commerce, as well as sales tax, and how it all fits and connects together to make your life easier when someone is trying to buy something from you as a distributor. So here are our wonderful presenters today. We have Katie and Telka from Western Computer, Chris from commercebuild, and Renee and Ash from Avalara. So very excited to have them walk you through the life of a distributor and how to connect those dots. So why does this matter? First, I just want to give us a little background, a little story, and help you understand what you're going to be seeing today, what we're going to be talking about, and why it all fits together. So we know distribution is just getting harder, especially today when customers' expectations are rising. We're going into multi-channels, trying to sell everywhere to everyone. Tax and compliance can be then complex because we are going into all these different areas. We're expanding, we're growing, which is so great. But we need these systems in place to help us do that. So, and also margins are tighter and tighter, and mistakes just cost more just based on all of the things that are going on in society today and how they impact us as a distributor. So today's story is about True Brew Distribution. And where the typical day gets complicated is when an order arrives and from different channels with different pricing rules, with different tax jurisdictions, with different fulfillment needs. And so as this volume grows, these manual steps that we're worried about, that we're trying to do in the background, can obviously slow down our production time, our operations, as well as our risk. And so today, the reality of modern distribution is what we're going to walk through and see how it all works together to make your jobs easier. So this is the day in the life flow, how it typically unfolds at True Brew Distribution. First, obviously, we have the order. We set the pace. They come in from whatever channel it may be that you are selling into. Then the validation happens. Then the operations keep this momentum going. And then the finance closes the loop. So you're going to see all these different components and how they fit together from an e-commerce standpoint, from an ERP accounting software standpoint, and from a accounting tax compliance standpoint. And so just to go over a little bit about the operational background and the accounting software, it's Business Central at the core. And this is your system of record. This is your real-time visibility. And this is where it anchors the entire process, which Telka will talk about. And so today we want to extend that core system with different solutions for commerce, for tax automation and compliance, for accuracy, for integrated workflows, and how all of these solutions connect together and provide these tools to make it simple and easy for the distribution, not only the distributor, but also the buying experience. So today we're going to be doing a live demo overview of True Brew Distribution and their coffee distributor, how processes work, how customers can place orders, how everything happens in Business Central in real time, how tax determination and compliance are then calculated, and connecting the whole order cash process. So with that, I am going to hand the reins over to Chris at commercebuild. Chris, are you ready?
I think so. And thank you for the great introduction. I will do a little bit of PowerPoint and then we'll jump right into the demo. So the problem we often see with distributors is that they pick a mainstream e-commerce solution, but those are often not built for an integration with an ERP, and data lives in different silos. Um, you would be managing your pricing, your inventory, your products, your customers, and your financials in the ERP. But the e-commerce system needs similarly pricing, inventory, products, customers, and financials to operate on in and of itself. So you end up having to build a connector, maintain those, and you're managing data in two different places. And as Amy already indicated, we have a slightly different approach to that. The reason for that is that without a seamless e-commerce integration, you'll have a lot of order errors. You have to manually process and correct things that leads to poor customer experience and of course, inefficient order management. commercebuild has been around for 20 years. We've always built e-commerce web stores on top of ERP. We always knew that our product would be integrating with ERP systems. We've been fully integrated to Business Central. We have 24-hour support. We have people in New Zealand and all the way onto the West Coast. So we can truly deliver that global approach. And we are your one-stop shop for planning, designing, connecting, and building your store on top of Business Central. As you can see here, kind of like the general infrastructure that companies operate on, they have their warehouses, their inventory, their pricing, customer data, business logic, like for example, sales tax, configurators, possibly their sales team. Business Central is at the core of that, and we hook right into that process without you having to manage things in two places. We can operate that with our headless engine through WooCommerce. People may know WooCommerce better under its parent company, WordPress. Almost half of the internet runs on WordPress. So you have a trusted e-commerce platform for the front end, for the experience of your clients that seamlessly integrates with Business Central for all the real-time data. That, of course, comes in different formats. Some people run a full integrated e-commerce solution. Other people prefer to just have a customer portal where people can pay open invoices. Some have a limited sales portal, but through the headless engine, all of these things are possible. I will show you a quick example. This is a client that has an open site, almost a B2C experience, right? But all logic, all product attributes, all prices, all inventory numbers, and if needed, images, what have you. If the ERP has it, we can bring it over seamlessly in real time onto the web store. And of course, that's customer specific. So when a different customer logs in, they will get different prices, different logic, exactly following what Business Central presents to us. Here's another example of such a web store. Now let's be TrueBrew distribution, a client of TrueBrew distribution, I should say. I can simply go to the search and search for an item. It shows me the whole coffee beans bag. And as I look at the details, the price for me is calculated. So it checks that real time with Business Central. It's $180. At this point, we don't have all the information yet to calculate the taxes, but you'll see that as I go through the process, it will add it. But any other attributes, product images, descriptions can come from the ERP as you need it. I'll add the item to my cart, and when we go view the cart, we can change the quantity if necessary, but it starts validating this logic with the ERP as well in case there's multiple products in the cart and combined they trigger separate logic. Here you see that address information is coming from the ERP from Business Central related to this customer, and based on that information, it calculates the taxes. And this is a real-time tax calculation using the Avalara module as part of Business Central as well, which you will see later too. If I would to choose a different address, you can enable or disable that for each client, whether they are allowed to do that or not. It would do a recalculation of those sales taxes based on what is applicable to that ship to address, of course. So You can see the flexibility there in terms of business logic and how you approach that. Payment terms, whether it's on account or with a credit card, all of that can also be configured per customer or group of customers. When I place the order, this actually creates a sales order in Business Central. And this is also a good point to switch it over to Katie to tell you a little bit more about Business Central.
Great. Thanks so much, Chris. Great introduction there. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. A little bit about Western Computer. Where we would fit into this picture is we would be helping to implement your Business Central as the ERP. So a little bit about us. Western Computer has been doing this for almost nearly 4 decades with a focus on one thing, and that one thing is Microsoft Dynamics. You can see on the slide, we have over 180 D365 professionals on our team, average employee tenure of over 6 years, and more than 1,700 ERP and CRM implementations under our belt. We're also a top 1% Microsoft partner and rated #1 for Microsoft partners on G2. But what really sets us apart is our promise to you: no suits, no spin. And what that means is we are really not here to rack up those billable hours or create dependencies on us. In fact, we take the approach of we want to build systems that your team can actually own. We want to partner with you long after the go live, and then make sure your data is connected across your entire operation, and work hand in hand with additional vendors like Avalara and commercebuild. Bottom line, we bring modern technology with that veteran discipline. Business Central is really built for distribution businesses like yours, operations that have real complexities, but you don't necessarily need an enterprise system that takes 2 years and $1 million to implement. You need something that handles your core distribution workflows out of the box, that's extensible as your business grows. So think things like multi-entity or warehouse scanning, and it gets you up and running faster than some of the alternatives on the market today. It's that right size solution for where you are today, but then gives you that room to grow. Now I'm going to hand it over to Telka, and she's going to show you some of this functionality in action.
Let's start at looking at our sales order list, because from commercebuild we have received an order from a customer for product, and as commercebuild sends that information over into Business Central, it will come over as a sales order. All documents, whether they come from e-commerce, you enter them manually, potentially you get orders via email, they will all land in this sales order spot. You have your customer information here, as well as the lines of what has been bought, and then the shipping information that is going to lend itself to then where we will want to collect sales tax. But as we look at the sales order, I want to point out a few things. Microsoft's goal with Business Central is that you are 1 to 2 clicks from anywhere you need to be at any given time. We have what are called fact boxes over here on the right hand side. You will notice that I am 1 click away from my customer card, so that I can examine some information about this customer if I need to. When thinking about sales as a distributor, we have to take into consideration not only the customer themselves, but potentially the ship to addresses that we would be going to for that customer. You can have as many ship to addresses as you want inside of Business Central for a customer, and this way we can track the tax area code and the liability of that customer. Now, one of the things that Avalara brings to the table, and they will talk about a little bit later, is how they establish that tax area code based on the ship to address on the sales document. So we don't have to have everything filled in on the customer card, but if it's a ship to address that you're going to go to on a regular basis, you certainly would want to have it there. Also, we can track, if the customer itself is tax liable or not. And this one is. So we have an item here that does belong to the retail tax group code. And this is the group code that then drives what sales tax, along with where the product is being shipped to, will determine the percentages of the sales tax that needs to be collected. As we scroll down to look at those ship to addresses, you will note that as those addresses come to us from CommerceBuild, they can be either the default address of the customer, they can be an alternate shipping address which would fall into those ship to addresses we have associated with the customer address on their customer card, or we can have a custom address. Let's pretend that someone is at a conference, at a hotel, they've run out of coffee, and they need something sent to them very quickly. They can have a custom address associated with that, maybe to the hotel where the conference is being held. So Business Central is going to be able to handle all of those scenarios for you as we need to start distributing that product out into the field. Now you will note here that I've got my coffee beans, and just like our customers being one click away, anytime we're on a sales order line, we're also one click away from our availability of that product or the item card itself. Now, if I drill into the item card, you're going to find, some very familiar needs when it comes to tracking items. Certainly, we're going to have an item number, description, a base unit of measure, so that I can track my cost and my pricing by that base, but you are not limited to that base. Business Central will allow you to track as many units of measure as you might need, so that I can track and inventory my product in pieces if I want to, but I also can sell it or purchase it in cases. When you use the item units of measure translations, the costing and the pricing are spot on. So you can be confident in the fact that if you purchase in cases, but then sell it in pieces, your cost of goods are going to be exactly what one piece or one sack of coffee beans would be in that case. You also can track different types of inventory or items. You can have inventory items, service items, and non-inventory items. An example of non-inventory item would be boxes for you to ship with. You want to trace the count of those boxes, but we immediately expense them off when we purchase them. The inventory tab inside of Business Central I find very handy because I can very quickly get to the availability or the quantity on hand of this product. As I drill down into that number, I can see what I have available to me. Also, I can see that I've got 11 on sales orders, and I can easily drill down into that number and open the document that those sales orders represent. Now, one of the things to note here is this is what we call a flow field. It essentially means that information is flowing forward to build that number. It will be spot on. Business Central is a fully interactive ERP system in that we, at any given time, anytime we post, we're going to see the results of that post in the subledgers that are affected. In a sales situation, it would be the items themselves, the customer AR, and then also the general ledger. There's no batch processing that happens. So as these flow fields build themselves, it you can count on it being spot on to what is going on in the system at this time. Certainly, we're going to have all of the costing available to us. Pricing, I can have multiple prices. If I have price groups, maybe I have customer groups that give different pricing. Maybe my corporate customers get different prices than my online customers with commercebuild. Also, you'll also see that we've got the replenishment system of either purchasing, a production order, or assembly. Now, we don't often see production orders with our distributor friends, but we might have some assemblies. Maybe you have a kit that you put together, or gift baskets, or Christmas baskets of various types of coffee, so that you can gather that together as an assembly, and it will consume all the individual products that you use. Those are just some things that you might want to reference from the sales order if we have a question about that item. But the item availability is really nice. Now, you'll note that we did have that 50 available to us when we were looking at the item card. But what is item availability? It really represents that quantity that we have on hand minus any sales orders, plus any purchase orders, any transfer orders, any assembly orders that we might be getting ready to build. It's going to represent actually the available stock in my system. You again are one click away from this information as you are communicating with customers or getting ready to fulfill this. Once a document is released, then the warehouse is able to see it. They are able to pick it, ship it, and then you would absolutely be able to post your invoice as a part of shipping, or you can review it to make sure those sales tax have calculated correctly before doing some sort of individual invoicing, or you can batch post the invoicing. A lot of options when it comes to being able to handle your sales orders. Now, one other thing that I will note is maybe we also sell to other corporations or distributors that do not pay sales tax. Even though I'm selling my coffee beans that are part of that retail tax group, and this sales order has an espresso machine on it that's also part of that retail sales group, you will note that I am not calculating any sales tax on this sales order. Why would that be? Well, this sales order is to my Addendum Corporation, and they have sent us a W-9, and we do not have to collect sales tax on them. Now, we can track that in Business Central, but that's also a really nice feature of Avatax in being able to track all those W-9s and certifications for you. Now, why would you potentially add Avatax on top of Business Central? If you are simply shipping to, one or two cities, Business Central can absolutely calculate those sales taxes for you, but that's not really what our distributors normally do. Our distributors are shipping all over the country, And some states are very easy to calculate sales tax. Some states are extremely difficult in calculating sales tax. When you run across the need to distribute all over the country or maybe to foreign countries, it's going to be really nice to allow our friends at Avalara to assist you in the calculation of those tax. That way you don't fail any audits, and you can depend on the sales tax that's being calculated. So now, as we start thinking about other features in Business Central, let's look at those features.
Awesome. Thank you, Talka. So now that we have seen TrueBrew go through a digital order and order processing in Business Central, we get to see how tax determination is delivered seamlessly with Avalara. So let's first address how and why sales tax can even be so complicated in the first place for distributors like TrueBrew. Whether it's expanding into new states, maybe starting to sell online, or perhaps even supporting more customer types, this is all going to lead to more transactions across more systems. And with that, tax compliance issues don't just show up at month end. They show up during order capture, pricing, fulfillment, and invoicing. So when that complexity isn't handled well, it creates order delays, manual rework, and risk that ultimately is going to slow down the business. Now, as transaction volume and complexity increase, manual processes simply don't scale. Those spreadsheets that you may be managing today and one-off fixes, they may work early on, but they're inevitably going to break down as your business grows. This is where automation becomes less about efficiency and more about keeping orders moving, reducing exceptions, and giving teams confidence that compliance is handled consistently across all channels. So exempt and resale sales are certainly a normal part of distribution, but they introduce risk when that documentation isn't complete or easy to validate. While customers provide certificates, the burden is on the seller to prove why tax wasn't charged. One single missing or invalid documentation can often lead to rework, a delayed close, and audit exposure when exemptions are managed manually or perhaps outside of those core systems. So when we think of getting things right in the world of tax determination, accurate tax outcomes start with how products and services are mapped. So distributors like TrueBrew often manage thousands upon thousands of SKUs, each with different tax treatment depending on where and how it's sold. When tax content and classification are not consistent, teams are going to rely on overrides and invoice corrections. Clean mapping helps drive consistent results across ERP, e-commerce, and EDI, reducing exceptions and ultimately making those audits and reporting easier. So bringing it back to BC, Business Central remains the system of record for orders, inventory, invoicing, and financials. Avalara works alongside Business Central to support tax determination, exemption handling, and even tariff-related needs within those existing workflows. With Western Computer together, the focus is on reducing risk and rework without slowing the business so teams can scale operations with more confidence. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Renee from Avalara to show just how that is done for TrueBrew distribution.
Thanks so much, Ash. So nice to meet all of you, and thanks for joining in on today's webinar. Now, what you're seeing on my screen is actually back inside of Business Central. And one thing I want to point out is how does commercebuild, how does Business Central, how does Avalara all work together? So an analogy that I want you all to think about is think of Avalara as the center of a Ferris wheel. Business Central is going to call into Avalara. commercebuild is going to call into Avalara. So when Chris demonstrated that portion, how tax generated there was because of the Avalara portal behind the scenes. When Telka demonstrated the transactions, tax was missing, and that's because now I'm going to leverage that missing gap by showing you how Avalara can natively feed all of that transactional detail by jurisdiction and provide the tax analysis right back into Business Central. Now you may be thinking to yourself, how do all of these pieces work together? So there is a little bit of setup, and that's what brings us to the first screen inside of Business Central. You can see up at the top here this workflow. Upon configuration of the Avalara portal, Avalara will now exist as the top part of the ribbon in your day-to-day work. The mapping exercise we have to think about. There's a mapping of your items that are going to live inside of Business Central. There's also going to be that mapping, that same mapping, as long as what you're selling inside of Business Central is also the same inside of commercebuild. That mapping exercise will also be done there as well. It doesn't have to be the same, but it can be the same. Well, that tax data here is going to flow to Avalara on the back end. But there's 3 pillars of data that Avalara needs to have in order to get all of these 3 systems, or even more, as a part of your ecosystem to work with the tax engine behind the scenes. So what are those 3? Number 1, Avalara has to know by legal entity, whether it's derived from an ERP system like Business Central or from an e-commerce platform like commercebuild. We have to know what your Nexus footprint is. You have to let Avalara know that on an ongoing basis. Once it is turned on inside the Avalara portal, then tax will be derived back into whatever solution connects to it. But now the second and the third pillar consist of what is it that you're actually selling. Avalara refers to that as items, which consist of products and services. Why I bring you to this screen here is Avalara, under the specifications here, there's a setup and then there's a utility. The utility tool drives here all of the Avalara touchpoints that are natively built inside of the Business Central platform. Everything that I am talking about from Avalara, I am going to show you I never left Business Central. Why? Because of that pre-built integration to allow you folks to not have to leave the systems that you are most confident in using on a day-to-day basis, knowing that accuracy, audit readiness, all of the jurisdictional information is handled by a tax engine, and Telka made reference to that we do all the homework on the back end, right? We're trying to allow you, from an automation tax perspective that's changing all the time and is very complex, we're allowing you the growth potential to focus on your business and focus on scalability. When we look at this, there's things you want to think about from a customer-related perspective as well, such as address validation. We want to ensure that they're right addresses. We also have to understand the tax code mapping, which is this screen right here. So when we look at this, the items that both Chris and Telka demonstrated consist of these 4 items right here. As you generate new items, we have this all laid out on one screen for you so that you don't have to go to the item level itself, but it's right here mapped. We are not expecting you to be tax experts. We're not expecting you to memorize tax codes. So you as a business have the ability to itemize each and every product or service individually, or you even can utilize category tax codes. But when you select the item, this here, and if I select an item, what this is doing is it's bringing up the catalog of items. So all your folks need to do is figure out, okay, am I selling an espresso machine? Am I selling residential coffee grinders? Are people coming in and purchasing whole beans, or am I distributing that? And then when folks come in, such as like a Starbucks to our True Brew coffee company, they may want to buy our coffee travel mugs. All of those 4 are deemed right here. And then we utilize the Avalara tax code as a one-time mapping exercise right here. Well, behind each one of those tax codes houses all of the pain. It knows exactly how to account for the taxability of any one of these items across all 50 states without you trying to figure out what's the jurisdiction, what's the rate, how do I account for the taxation of these? Is it exempt? Is it taxed at a reduced rate and threshold? Or is it fully taxable? All of that goes into and flows into the data that Avalara is analyzing on the back end in less than a second. So there is no lag time for users inside of Business Central, as well as no lag time inside of an e-commerce platform. Now, as we continue to move on, anytime that there is a tax rate change, do you have to go back in here and update the tax code? And the answer is no. The rate changes will automatically feed through these tax codes that are going to exist here, as well as inside of commercebuild. So if you were to transact today and you were to transact next month and all the months to come, there can be a variation in tax rates, rules, and jurisdictional mandates. But Avalara is going to capture that in real time to keep you and your business compliant across every jurisdiction. Now, the last pillar of data we have to encompass is your customers. Are your customers taxable? Are your customers exempt? And if they're exempt, why are they exempt? What is the reason? Do you have the appropriate documentation to support, if ever under audit, as to why you did not transact and produce tax on that specific invoice? Obviously, you're transacting, you're just not producing tax. And you do not want the capability of non-tax to be reclassified as taxable with back penalties and interest. So when we move along to the customer card now natively inside of Business Central, there's going to be a few things that happen here. Number one, you're going to put in the headquartered address that is tied directly to that customer. This does not have to mean this is the only address. It is not, obviously, doesn't even have to be the same address where it actually occurs and ships and your customers are using and receiving your goods. However, you have that capability to put that headquartered address right here. Down below, you're going to see, once again, you're going to have related tabs calling directly into Avalara as a real-time call to validate that address. What does that mean? Well, what that means is we're taking this address and we're scrubbing it. Avalara is not assessing sales tax based on a zip or a zip plus 4. We are strictly looking at the conversion of this address, dropping it on a pin on a map behind the scenes, and converting it to latitude and longitude coordinates. That is how we're going to produce the jurisdictions and account for the taxability across every single one of those jurisdictions with the applicable rates. Now, down below here, we want to ensure that all of our customers are marked tax liable, even if they're not. Why? Because Avalara has an engine behind the scene that's going to help you not only store the exempt certificates, but monitor the exempt certificates and maintain those to ensure that your customers maintain their exempt status and do not default to taxability. So with this being said, I want to call your attention now to the related tab. There's 3 Avalara functions. The first one is going to be a validate address. That's the real-time call out to Avalara. It's going to push back the address and ensure it's validated. And you as a business can select it and say, yes, I accept it. Once it's validated, you do not have to revalidate validated addresses. However, let's call your attention to this AvaTax tax exemption tab. If a customer is truly exempt, and this is part of the onboarding process, natively inside of Business Central, you could set up a brand new customer. And if they tell you that they're exempt and you are established with Nexus and you have registered in that state for sales and consumer use tax, guess what? It's important that you as a business obtain that certificate. Right from in here, from the AvaTax tab, you can add update customer to the exemption. This is pushing this data, this customer for this state directly into Avalara without duplication of data entry. Okay, it's creating that customer. And now you simultaneously have the capability to request an exempt certificate. Well, requesting an exempt certificate now executes 2 calls. Number one, it's going to send a customer a pre-configured email. Well, that email can then go ahead and be automated for recurring customers so that you as a business do not have to get bogged down in trying to understand when do I have to reach back out to obtain a new certificate versus not, okay? What also happens though is they're prompted via that email to a website link called Avalara Cert Express. Now, many times customers do not know what certificates they owe you. There's a lot of back and forth. If they're not sending you the correct certificate, that's not going to protect your business if ever under audit. Therefore, you are not compliant with the state. Well, Avalara has a tool for your customer to be able to select the state and the reason, and Avalara populates the form that needs to be completed. Well, that form is not going to be stored and maintained in Business Central. It's going to be stored and maintained in Avalara. And for validity purposes and accuracy, you inside of Business Central now can retrieve any certificates that are valid inside of Avalara directly inside of Business Central. So now here as a customer, if I called you up and said, can you guys verify for me if I sent you the Washington resale exempt certificate form? Immediately I can hit that retrieval and it's going to bring me to a list, okay, of all of the state certificates that I have on file for this customer. So right here, you're going to see Washington. If this was a lengthy list, you're going to see it right there. That is also a trigger, though, to understand, okay, if I have a certificate on file, that means I'm expecting $0 of tax for this customer. And if I know this is an ongoing exempt customer and all of a sudden I see tax, that could be an indicator to say something happened with their certificate. Did they not proactively send it to me prior to an invoice? And if it's expired, Avalara is going to kick in by default to help ensure that you as a business are protected and paying the state. Are there workarounds? Absolutely, that can be addressed directly inside of Business Central upon implementation. So here's your proof that Avalara is going to always send you the most valid certificate, but is also going to store those expired certificates. So that takes those 3 pillars of data, understanding how we all connect the dots. Now, I'm picking up the missing piece from when Telka demonstrated an exempt transaction and a taxable transaction. First, we're going to look at an actual exempt transaction. So I went ahead and actually posted this transaction for you to see. I picked on this my whole coffee beans and I picked my espresso machine. I have an exempt certificate on file as I just demonstrated right here because this customer is a reseller of these products for me. The quantity I have right here. So I've demonstrated my unit cost. My total is $180 as what Telka demonstrated and $380 for espresso machine. Well, there's no tax right here. But before you go to post, Avalara has a tool to help eliminate how many times you have to credit memo or credit rebill. And that's by hitting the invoice tab and statistics. Now, when I show you this, this is taking the 3 pillars of data and making it live for you. We have to first understand, where is all the data coming from? Is it from a warehouse? Is it from a headquartered address? Where is the data coming from? Where is the data going to? Where are those products and services going to where your customer is actually going to use and consume? So when Chris demonstrated and showed that the goods were getting shipped to, I believe it was Batavia, New York, as well as Telka, well, that's where we have to think about, okay, what's the tax that's being generated? In this case, it's going to Seattle, Washington from Georgia. Now, when we drill down into here, Avalara is also taking into account the ship from and the ship to and converting both to latitude and longitude. Why? Because there's an additional concept of state sourcing rules that have to get applied for the breakout of potential taxability across state, county, city, and various jurisdictions, whether it's origin-based, destination-based, or hybrid-based. We take that burden off of your plate. Drilling in down here proves out why there is no sales tax. This is the brains of Avalara coming directly into your ERP system, and this is the brains coming directly into commercebuild to prove out we are not assessing sales tax for this customer. The reason being here is because we have the exempt certificate on file, and when you're looking at all of this, we can see here what are the jurisdictions, what is the rate, and what is the taxable amount. Okay? It means that everything is derived from a tax exempt amount in that column. When I pivot back here, the next line item, you can also see that as well. So by line item, you will be able to see that there is no tax being produced. But now what happens instead of an exempt customer? We have a taxable customer. We want to see the tax breakout. We want to ensure, is it all taxable or is a portion of it non-taxable and a portion of it exempt? How we determine all of that, what derives in these columns, is based on the taxability tax codes that you've mapped across those items that live inside a commercebuild, that live inside a Business Central. That's going to produce if it's fully taxable or a portion is non-taxable. And the exempt ties directly with the exempt certificates. So in the last post here of another invoice, I have generated for you an actual customer that has come into our True Brew coffee store and has bought a coffee grinder for residential purposes, and they bought one travel mug. They travel a lot. They need to keep their coffee warm. You can see here that the the tax amounts that we're going to tax it based on derives right here. Well, now you see a total tax. It's no longer zero. Why? Avalara made that determination, push back tax, and now let's drill in once again. I now see that there's $12 of tax. Here's the $12 of tax, right? It's a $150 product. We have now a New York County and a New York State component jurisdiction. This is going to Batavia, New York. And now based on these amounts times the rate that's going to constantly change, Avalara is showing you now how much tax is going to be calculated per jurisdiction. So this allows you to know that all of that accuracy is being done behind the scenes, but leveraging the system that you are most comfortable with and knowing you would be able to address any customer tax related questions right from this screen. I know it's a lot to take in, but I want to thank you for your time. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Ash now as we jump into our next slide. So thank you.
Awesome. That was great. Thanks, Renee. So this diagram that we're seeing here shows the basic interaction between Avalara and your business systems. Here we can see TrueBrew is integrated with Business Central and commercebuild, but of course the architecture of your integrations can vary based on where your transactions are being committed. And ultimately what we'll do is connect all of your systems with our pre-built connectors so that you can do a few things. Establish a single source of truth for compliance data, estimate recalculation and duplicate transactions across multiple systems, track liabilities in all systems, apply consistent tax rates for reconciliation, track economic nexus, and enable automation of returns filing and remittance. So here at Avalara, we have over 1,500 pre-built integrations. So chances are, whatever system you're on, we've got you covered. We also have an API connection if you do have any kind of homegrown systems. But we've got you covered with kind of our pre-built integrations. All right, and then I wanted to transition to the hot topic of tariffs. I know tariffs are becoming definitely more and more of a consideration for distributors, especially as sourcing expands and supply chains change. So with this, rates and rules vary by product and country, and classification directly impacts landed cost and margins. When tariff considerations are handled late or manually, pricing surprises and margin erosion follow. The goal is not to turn a distributor like TrueBrew into trade experts. It's more into getting visibility and consistency into how duties and tariffs are handled as a part of your day-to-day operations. So if tariffs are something that you yourself get the pleasure of dealing with at your company, Avalara's got you covered. And it's over to you, Amy.
All right, Renee, you mind keeping the slides going if that's okay? I think the rest, okay. Okay, well, you saw a lot today. You saw how all of these pieces connect and come together, from e-commerce to ERP to sales tax and compliance and exemption certificates. So this is obviously crosses all teams, finance, operations, and IT. And we want to scale for growth. That is the main goal. And by using all of these solutions together, that will help you do it a little bit easier and will help with those disconnected systems that you may have. It may help with those slower orders that you have. It may help, obviously, with compliance with sales tax and exemption certificates. And of course, funneling it all into Business Central as your source of truth. And just to kind of wrap it all up with this bigger picture and what it really looks like and why we're here today and why we wanted to share these different solutions with you and how they all work together, because this is what modern distribution looks like. These systems working together, fewer handoffs, better decision making, turning those insights into action, creating that scalable growth so that way you can focus on growing your business, like Renee said, versus having to worry about sales tax, versus having to worry about your e-commerce and getting those customers' orders in time, and having it all be in Business Central to help you manage it all. So I hope that you were able to see that bigger picture today and see how all of these solutions work together to help make it easier. And to wrap it all up, I again hope you found this informational and educational, that these tools, these features, all of these solutions help reduce friction, help get orders done, help be compliant, and having Business Central as your backbone to make it all happen with these connected systems from e-commerce to sales tax. And we'd like to thank you for being here and for joining us. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We have a few minutes, so we could certainly answer those. And just want to let you know this is being recorded, so we will be sending out a recording email in the next couple of days, as well as a asset that we put together, or a guide that kind of shows all the different features and functionality of these solutions, where they play, what you need to know, how they all work together. And hopefully that will help you understand where you might need, where those gaps are, where you need to fill, where those pain points are, and these solutions and where they fit in and how they can help your distribution.